My girlfriend sent our private sex video to a guy she met on Tinder 3 years ago while I was working 80 hours a week to build a future for us in Dallas. My girlfriend used our most intimate, sacred moments as digital currency to buy a few minutes of attention from a stranger on the other side of the world. My girlfriend looked me in the eyes every single night for months, kissed me, and told me she loved me, while she was systematically uploading the most private parts of our life to another man's phone. This is not just a story about a mistake or a lapse in judgment. This is a story about the total, calculated annihilation of a man's soul in the middle of a sweltering Texas summer. My name is David. I am 32 years old, and for the last 3 years, I honestly thought I was one of the lucky ones. I live and work in Dallas, Texas. By day, I am a senior logistics analyst for a major shipping firm near the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. My life is built on numbers, supply chains, and predictable outcomes. I deal in the logic of how things move from point A to point B. To make sure we could afford the house she always wanted, the one in the suburbs with the big backyard and the white fence, I took on a second job as a freelance data consultant at night. I was grinding. I was exhausted. I was coming home at 2 a.m. with my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets, all for the sake of our future. I thought we were a team. I thought we were building an empire together. We started dating in January 2022. From the very first week, I was hooked. She was my peace. She was the person I wanted to come home to after a 12-hour shift of managing freight manifests and global shipping delays. She was the woman I planned to marry. For 3 years, I gave her everything I had: my time, my loyalty, my finances, and my complete undivided trust. I didn't just love her, I believed in her. I thought our relationship was built on a rock that nothing could shake. But about a month ago, the air in our Dallas apartment started to feel different. It was subtle at first, the way she would flip her phone face down the second I walked into the room, the way she started taking her phone into the bathroom for 40-minute showers, the way she would suddenly become hyper-protective of her screen if I even leaned over to ask what she wanted for dinner. As a logistics guy, I'm trained to notice when a system is out of balance. I felt the shift, but I buried it. I told myself I was just tired from the 2 jobs. I told myself I was being paranoid because of the lack of sleep. I chose to trust her until the very second that trust was weaponized against me. It happened on a Tuesday night. The Dallas heat was thick, the kind of humidity that makes you feel like you're breathing underwater. We were lying in bed, and she had fallen asleep early. I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with a data set that wouldn't balance. Her phone, sitting on the nightstand between us, lit up with a notification. I usually never look. I never felt the need to. But that night, a cold chill ran down my spine. I picked it up. The message was on Instagram. It was in vanish mode, but a snippet of the preview remained on the lock screen. It was graphic. It was sexual. It was a name I didn't recognize, talking to my girlfriend like he owned her body. I knew her passcode. She had given it to me a year ago to prove she had nothing to hide. I unlocked the phone, and in that moment, the floor beneath me simply vanished. I started scrolling. I started digging into the archives of her digital life, and what I found was a library of betrayal. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was a long-term, calculated campaign of deception. There were messages going back months, conversations with a guy she had met on Tinder back in early 2022, right before we became official. They had a history. They had a connection that she had never truly severed. They had reconnected sometime in 2024, and while I was sitting in my office at the airport or grinding away at my second job, she was giving this stranger the best parts of herself. I saw the photos first. Photos I didn't even know existed. Explicit, raw, high-definition nudes that she had taken in our bathroom, in our bed, wearing the lingerie I had bought for her. She had sent him everything, her boobs, her body, shots that were so intimate they made me feel like I was looking at a stranger. And then I found the videos. I felt a wave of physical nausea hit me as I watched my girlfriend using a vibrator, a gift from me for the viewing pleasure of a guy on the other side of the globe. But the kill shot, the one that felt like a physical strike to my heart, was the sex video. our sex video, a moment of absolute vulnerability, a moment I thought was sacred and private between two people who loved each other, had been recorded and sent to this man. She had invited a stranger into our bed. She had turned our intimacy into a piece of content for a guy she met on a dating app 3 years ago. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just woke her up. I turned on every light in the bedroom, the harsh glare reflecting off the Dallas skyline outside our window. I threw the phone onto the bed and I demanded to know the truth. But confrontation was raw. It was loud. It was the kind of guttural, soul-crushing screaming that leaves you empty. I ended the relationship right there, in the middle of the night, while the rest of the city was sleeping. I told her to pack her things and I told her I never wanted to see her face again. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. That same night, a massive storm system, the remnants of a hurricane that had been building in the Gulf, slammed into Dallas. The roads were flooding within minutes. The power grid across our section of the city failed. The local news was issuing emergency alerts about structural warnings and mandatory evacuations in her parents' neighborhood. She couldn't leave. The streets were underwater and every hotel in the area was booked solid with people fleeing the storm. I was trapped in my own home with the woman who had just destroyed my life. For 7 days, we lived in a state of psychological warfare while the rain hammered against the windows. The darkness of the apartment was a perfect mirror for the darkness in my chest. And this is the part that still haunts me, the part I am ashamed to admit. During that week, in the middle of the trauma and the tears and the absolute hatred I felt for her, we became exes with benefits. It was a toxic, desperate attempt to find comfort in the only person I had left, even though she was the one who had cut me open. We would spend hours in brutal, screaming matches, and then, exhausted by the weight of it all, we would end up in bed. It was a trauma response. It was the sound of a man drowning and grabbing a handful of fire just to feel something other than the cold. I officially cut the cord 2 weeks ago once a storm cleared and the city started to dry out. But the silence never came. We never stopped talking. I became obsessed with the details. I became a detective in the ruins of my own life. I forced her to sit down and give me a timeline. I wanted to know how a woman I loved could be so cold. I wanted to know how she could kiss me goodbye in the morning and send our sex video to a stranger in the afternoon. We sat on the couch, the Texas sun finally breaking through the clouds, and I made her go through her phone with me. She told me she met him on Tinder in January 2022. She said they had an instant connection. She said they reconnected in 2024. At first, she tried to tell me it was just casual chat. She tried to tell me it didn't mean anything because he lived on the other side of the world. She was trickle-truthing me, giving me a tiny piece of the truth just to see if I would break, and then revealing a little more when I caught her in another lie. She admitted that she didn't block him when he started making sexual advances. She claimed she told him she was in a relationship, but she never walked away. She liked the thrill. She liked the validation. She admitted that she started sending the nudes in early 2025, and it didn't stop until July. Think about that timeline. Think about what we were doing during those months. We were celebrating our 3-year anniversary. We were mourning the death of my grandmother. We were planning our future. And all while I was holding her hand, she was entertaining a ghost from her past. We even called the guy. I stood over her and made her dial the number. I wanted to hear the voice of the man who had been a silent partner in my bed. I watched her face as she spoke to him, and that's when the most painful realization of all hit me. He didn't care about her. He wasn't emotionally invested. To him, she was just a girl who sent him free porn. She had destroyed our 3 years of history, our home, and my trust for a man who didn't even know her last name. It was pure lust, a digital high that she chased because she was bored and I was too busy working 2 jobs to provide for her. After the storm subsided, she finally moved her things out, but the damage was done. I'm sitting here in this apartment in Dallas looking at the empty spaces where her things used to be, and I am lost. My heart still wants the woman I thought she was, but my mind, the mind of an analyst, is looking at the data, and the data says she betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. I told her I need space. I told her I need time to heal before I can even think about what comes next. She says she is willing to wait. She says she will change, but I'm standing in the ruins of a 3-year dream, and I don't know if there's anything left to save. The hurricane remnants didn't just bring rain to Dallas. They brought a cold, suffocating darkness that trapped me in a living nightmare for 7 long days. During that week, while the rain hammered against the glass of my high-rise and the power grid flickered and died, leaving the city in a state of emergency, we fell into a toxic and twisted cycle. We became exes with benefits. I know how that sounds. I know how the world judges a man who goes back to the person who burned his world down, but when your entire reality is incinerated and you are locked in an apartment with the only person you have loved for 3 years, your brain does strange things to survive. I was a man who prided himself on logic, a senior logistics analyst who could map out a supply chain across 3 continents, but I couldn't map out a way to breathe without her, even when she was the one choking me. We never stopped talking during those 2 weeks, after the initial breakup. We still chatted, we still video called, and we stayed in contact with my permission because I found myself in a place where the hardest part wasn't the cheating itself. It was finding myself still loving the person who had betrayed me. She was still my source of comfort, the only person who knew how I took my coffee and how I felt when the pressure at the shipping firm became too much to handle. I told her I wanted to understand everything. I told her that if there was even a shadow of a chance for us, I needed to see how it all began with that guy. I demanded the raw, unfiltered truth, not the sanitized version she had been feeding me. She told me she met him on Tinder back in January 2022, right before we became official. They had a history that I was never told about. We sat together and tried to recover their old conversations on her phone, but most of them were gone. They had used vanish mode on Instagram for the worst of it, ensuring that their digital trail would disappear into the void. She tried piecing things together for me, but it was a classic case of trickle truthing. She would reveal one small detail to see if I would explode, and when I stayed calm, she would drop another tiny piece of the puzzle. It was a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts. Here is what I eventually forced out of her. The guy lives on the other side of the globe, thousands of miles away from Texas. To her, that distance made the betrayal feel less real. She claimed that because there was no physical act, it wasn't real cheating. But to me, the distance didn't matter. The intent was there. They had reconnected sometime in 2024 and started talking casually about life updates. Early on, when he would make sexual advances, she said she would try to shut him down or change the topic. She told him she was in a relationship, but this guy was persistent, and despite the advances, despite the disrespect to our relationship, she never blocked him. She never shut the door. She left it cracked open just enough for him to crawl through. As the truth started to bleed out, I realized the scale of the deception. Before she ever sent the major stuff, like the video of her using a vibrator or the video of us, she had already sent him multiple nudes. Photos of her breasts, her body, explicit shots that were meant for my eyes only. At first, she lied and claimed it was only one photo or just a picture showing a bit of cleavage. But I knew her. I knew the look in her eyes when she was hiding something. I kept pushing until she admitted the sexting probably started in early 2025 and went on until July. Think about that timeline. Think about what we were doing in 2025 while she was sending herself to a stranger. During that exact time, we celebrated our anniversary at a high-end steakhouse in downtown Dallas. We celebrated birthdays and job achievements. She was the one who held me and comforted me through the death of my grandmother. We were planning international trips, looking at maps and talking about our future children, all while she was secretly doing this behind my back. She admitted that sometimes she would sext him just to toy with him while she was doing other things, not even touching herself, just letting him imagine whatever he wanted. She treated our intimacy like a game, a distraction from her boredom. I needed to see the man she had been talking to. I needed to see the person who had been a silent partner in our bedroom. We called the guy using her phone. I stood right there and told her exactly what to reply to his messages. That was the moment the last of my illusions shattered. I realized he was never emotionally invested in her, and she wasn't invested in him either. It was pure lust, a recapture of a toxic dynamic they had before our relationship even began. He didn't care about the woman I loved. He just cared about the content she provided. After the storm cleared and the Dallas sun finally broke through the clouds, we went to church together. We sat in the back of the sanctuary, prayed, and cried until our eyes were swollen and raw. She asked for forgiveness over and over. She messaged my parents and apologized to them, knowing how much I had already told them about what happened. She seemed genuinely broken, but the questions in my mind wouldn't stop. I started questioning my own worth. I asked her if she ever felt like I wasn't giving her enough love or attention. She looked at me and said, "Probably." That answer hit me harder than the discovery of the messages. We sat on the floor of the apartment and went through everything: our old chats, our photos, the boxes of gifts and letters we had given each other since 2022. We looked at the evidence of 3 years of life. But after looking at the effort I had put in, she finally admitted that the problem was never me. I had given her love, attention, and care. I had worked 2 jobs every day to make sure she had the life she wanted. She admitted she simply let someone from her past re-enter her life and destroy everything because she missed the thrill of the chase. I told her plainly that she could have told me the moment he started flirting again. She could have walked into the living room and said she was feeling lonely. But she didn't, because she didn't want to deal with the consequences. She knew it was wrong. She admitted she didn't block him because she thought he was just a friend. I told her the truth. She didn't stop because a part of her liked it. She missed the thrill, the attention, and the validation of a stranger. She tried to deny it at first, but deep down, her mind and body knew she was enjoying the sexting that led to the nudes and the videos. Eventually, she admitted I was right. Now, after learning all these things, I am in a place where my heart and my head are at war. I still want to be with her. I still look at her and see the girl I fell in love with in 2022. We talked about how she plans to change, but I told her that empty words mean nothing now. She has to show me actions that are consistent and believable. After 2 weeks of endless questions, I realized that this was an isolated case. She had turned down every other guy who tried to chat with her at work or through friends. But with this guy from her past, she couldn't say no. I made it clear to her that this will be forever traumatic for me. It will require lifelong healing. I told you that if we ever get back together, I will probably doubt every word that comes out of her mouth. I will overthink every late night at work and every time she picks up her phone. She said she is willing to stay patient. She said she will keep reassuring me and remain completely honest until the end. I still don't know what to do. I can't even hate her, despite the sex video, despite the nudes, despite the months of lies. My heart still wants her, but my mind is telling me I don't know if I can ever fully trust her again. I told her not to rush me. I need time and space in this city to figure things out before I make a final decision. She says she understands and is willing to wait no matter how long it takes. She's reading self-help books, watching videos about the psychology of cheating, and she is open to therapy. I talk to her family and friends, and they tell me she is genuinely full of regret. They say she wants to fix herself because she still wants this relationship. I also reflected on my own behavior in 2025, and I have to be honest. I was emotionally and sexually distant. I was working 2 jobs every day, coming home exhausted and barely present. I don't know if that's an excuse, but it's the reality of how we got here. Now, I'm just waiting to see if the man I used to be can ever live with the man I have become. The hurricane has passed, and the Dallas sun is back to its brutal, unforgiving self, baking the asphalt outside my apartment until the air shimmers with heat. It has been exactly 2 weeks since I officially ended things with the woman I thought was my forever. 2 weeks of silence, 2 weeks of screaming, and 2 weeks of the confusion so deep it feels like I am walking through a fog. I am David, and for the last 14 days, I have been living in a reality I don't recognize. I have spent my career as a senior logistics analyst, solving problems, finding efficiencies, and making sure everything is exactly where it needs to be. But there is no efficiency in a broken heart, and there is no logic in the way I feel right now. I have learned the hard, bitter truth in these last 14 days. I thought the hardest part of being betrayed would be the moment I saw those messages. I thought the peak of the pain would be watching that video she sent to a stranger. But I was wrong. The hardest part isn't the discovery of the cheating. The hardest part is finding yourself still loving the person who destroyed you. It is the realization that the woman who just shattered your soul is still the only person you want to talk to when the world gets too heavy. She is still my source of comfort, and that is a special kind of torture. It is like being thirsty, and the only water available is the very poison that is killing you. We haven't stopped talking. I know the experts and the guys on the forums say you have to go no contact immediately. They say you have to erase her existence. But they aren't the ones sitting in this apartment in Dallas, surrounded by 3 years of memories. I gave her permission to stay in contact because a part of me wasn't ready to let go of the ghost. We have spent hours on video calls, dissecting the remains of our life. I told her I wanted to understand everything. I told her that if there was even a 1% chance of us rebuilding, she had to be a different person. We talked about change. She told me how she plans to fix herself, how she plans to become the woman I deserved. But I looked at her through that screen and told her the truth. I told her that empty words mean absolutely nothing to me anymore. For 6 months, her words were a lie. Her "I love you" was a lie. Her "I miss you" was a lie. I told her that from this moment on, I don't want to hear what she plans to do. I want to see what she actually does. I told her she has to show me actions that are believable and consistent. I am an analyst. I track data over time, and right now, her data is a flat line of betrayal. She is trying. I have to give her that. She told me she is reading self-help books, diving into the psychology of why people throw away the best things in their lives. She is watching videos about infidelity and the trauma it causes. She told me she is open to therapy, that she is willing to sit on a couch and have a stranger pick apart her character until she finds where the rot started. I talked to her friends and her family. These are people who have seen us together since 2022. They told me she is a wreck. They say she is genuinely remorseful, that she spends her days talking to them about how much she regrets what she did. They tell me she wants this relationship more than anything. But then there is the other side of the coin, the side I have to look at when I'm alone at 3 a.m. I have been doing a lot of reflecting on 2025. I have been looking back at the months leading up to the betrayal. I am a man who works 2 jobs. I work the day shift at the shipping firm and the night shift as a consultant. I was working 80 hours a week, coming home exhausted, my mind still stuck on logistics and data streams. I have to be honest with myself. I was emotionally and sexually distant. I was a ghost in my own home. I was so focused on the future, on the house and the security, that I forgot to live in the present with the woman I loved. Does that excuse her sending our private sex video to a guy on Tinder? Absolutely not. Nothing justifies that level of violation, but it helps me see the cracks or the poison leaked in. I left the door open, and she chose to let a stranger walk through it. I realized after 2 weeks of endless questions that this was an isolated case. I checked everything. All the other guys at her work, the friends of friends, the randoms in her DMs. She turned them all down. She was a wall against everyone else. But with this one guy from her past, this guy she met in 2022, she couldn't say no. They had a history, an instant connection that she used as a justification for the thrill. She admitted she misses attention. She admitted she liked the rush. I told her this is going to be forever traumatic for me. I told her that if we ever get back together, I will be a different man. I will be the man who doubts. I will be the man who overthinks every text, every notification, and every time she says she's staying late. I will be a man who requires lifelong healing. She looked at me and said she is willing to stay patient. She said she will reassure me 1,000 times a day if that's what it takes. She says she will be completely honest and transparent until the end of time. I don't know what to do. My heart still beats for her, but my mind is a fortress of suspicion. I can't even hate her, and that might be the most pathetic part of all. I look at her and I see the girl who held me when I was down, but I also see the girl who sold our intimacy for the validation of a stranger. I told her not to rush me. I told her I need time and space in this Dallas heat to breathe and think. I need to figure out if I can ever see her or us the same way again. She says she understands. She says she is willing to wait no matter how long it takes for me to make a decision. She is waiting in the wings, hoping for a second chance that I'm not sure she deserves. I'm sitting here, a 32-year-old man who thought he had it all figured out, and I'm asking myself the same question over and over. Am I cooked? Am I a fool for staying? Or is there actually a way back from this? I need to heal. I need to find the man I was before that notification lit up the room. Until then, I am just a man in Dallas waiting for the smoke to clear.